Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Danae, and I'm here with a message for you. Happy Thursday. Happy Leap Day. Today is February 29th, and you could say it's probably a bit of a portal of sorts to have a leap day and a leap year and in an 8-year. New beginnings to project ourselves into, potentially at an acceleration that is particularly unique or magnified more than most years, most normal years. So yeah, take that as you will. I kind of had sort of a download that I thought I was going to share today, but something is telling me to kind of pull back for now. If it pronounces itself throughout the message, then I'll definitely take liberty to share. But otherwise, I just want to get into a message, okay? So let's cut the cards one more time and see what we got here. Wow, definitely some forward movement with the Six of Wands. Yeah. Victory, success, rewards, recognition for your hard work, your dedication, for your passion, pure passion at that, and your persistence. Yeah. Being supported to the next, on your path to the next point of, I don't even know, we could say prosperity, productivity, prominence in some way, shape, or form, leaving competition, comparison, chaos, confusion behind, and really just being exalted for who you are and what you do naturally. That's what this card is given, the Six of Wands. And it's all justifiable, all balanced, nothing particularly, fabricated about this success. It's been it's well deserved. I'll just say it like that. It's certainly well deserved, okay? All right, so let's see what we got in that regard. I love it. Talk about advanced forward movement, projectile prominence, whatever that means. That's just what I heard. It's given that, but it also speaks to there was some work that was done. There was some dedication, some effort, maybe even some blood, sweat, and tears. She almost, or he almost, however you see it, looks like a warrior. Like you've been through some things. You didn't just get here, magically. It may even appear to be so from the outside looking in. And there may even be some supernatural support there, for sure, but certainly not without physical exertion and discipline, I would say. Dedication even more so than discipline, though. All right, let's see. There's the struggle right there, or a struggle, somebody's struggle. With the two, let's go over here, because I know I'm gonna probably do more than that. The Two of, in fact, let's go up. The 10, I'm sorry, not the two of any damn thing. The 10 of Wands here. Ten of Wands. The difference between the two is the Four. So leaving perhaps some struggle and pressure and hardship. Maybe this is the transition. This is what I'm talking about. Like, there was definitely some work put in, having released some of those burdens, and that probably being particularly, this makes a lot of sense. When we got the 10, the 5 is behind the 1 sitting on the horse, and the 6 of Wands, leaving behind that chaos, confusion, competition, that old world mentality, releasing the pressure to keep up with that frequency, or to even defend yourself against it, or fight against it, I should say, more than anything. And then what's the difference there? After the 5 minus the 1 is the 4, as I'm speaking of, which would be balanced harmony, partnership that is exalted on account of what it has overcome in the 4 of Wands, which we had prominently yesterday as the leading card in the reading yesterday. So let's see what else we got, but interesting start. Almost the Hangman and the Empress. I saw them, but they didn't flip, so. Losing control. I didn't get my disclaimer today about these slippery cards. Bear with me. Eight of Cups. Strength card. Okay. So someone had the courage and the will to walk away from a dissatisfying situation that caused a lot of burdens, a lot of stress, that was very pressure intense. And that's what has exalted them to some level of success. Let's see, can we be a bit more specific than that, Spirit? Let's see. Strength card. Okay. I heard that clear as day. Like, I gave you specifics already and you don't want to speak on it. Like, okay, all right, I'll talk about it. All right, so I had this download the other day. Now, bear with me because, as I've already said, I don't even really feel like, because as I was kind of like thinking about it and working it out, then some other things started to come to me. and then it was kind of interfering with where I felt comfortable to share, and it was almost like conflicting to some degree. But this was a while ago that I had sort of like a download about how the story of David and Goliath is kind of like a story of what is it like jumping timelines, you know. And I was like, you know, as I'm listening internally as to how this is breaking down. And I had it, and that day I kind of was like, maybe I should share that, but I wanted some time to really kind of work it out a bit more, even read the scripture a bit more to have more context, not just off of my general knowledge of that story, which of course, if you don't subscribe to Christian beliefs or even Jewish beliefs for that matter, i.e. the high priestess holding the Torah with a cross on her chest, you don't have to, because we all can relate to the story of David and Goliath as like, you know, one of those you can do it type of stories. You know, you can overcome and outperform even your most natural human expectations to. You can supersede your most natural human expectations to some superpower of sorts that would ultimately claim you a victory beyond what was really imaginable for someone of your stature, of your size, or of your, you name it when it comes to David, like your economical status, your age, your intelligence, your spiritual perspective or lack thereof, you know, like all of that type of stuff, right? So I had this thought about how, you know, David jumped timelines that day. Now, before that moment when he actually faced Goliath, first of all, the lion is here, you know, that's, you know, the line of Judah, that was the throne that he ascended to ultimately. And he was ordained to do so even before he took that position, right? By Samuel, who anointed him, as the story is told, by divine order as the next king, while Saul was actually still in position. And he was supposed to be the establishment of that dynasty eternally, more or less, is what the prophecy was. Now, up until the moment when he was faced with this moment of defeating Goliath, he was still doing what he was doing when he was anointed, still being a shepherd, still tending after his father's sheep, still being kind of like the runt of the litter amongst his big brute brothers who were actually on the battlefield that day when he came out to bring them lunch. They were armed and ready for war, but were all afraid, just as everyone else was, to face this giant. Even the king, Saul himself, was afraid to face this giant. So here comes David in this moment of truth where he's coming for something completely unrelated to the task that he's about to face. He's coming to be a servant, get into that, as a matter of fact, bringing his brother's lunch, and sees a golden opportunity to more or less, as I see it now, to avenge the past, because this giant was threatening the heritage of his people and even the continuance of it, to affirm the present or secure the present, as the kingdom in its present form was more or less in jeopardy of being attacked, if not eliminated in that moment, by this giant, which was like the most feared opponent and enemy in all the land at that point in time. And then he established the dynasty, a divine dynasty in that regard, because of his bravery to match up to that challenge. He was he not only, because there was the offer was that anyone that would take on the giant, there was some absolution of like taxes or some type of financial kickback that you would get if you took on the challenge and actually, defeated him. So he more or less like secured his family in the present sense, from their simple stature, which his brothers was on the front line. His dad was a shepherd keeper or something. He had livestock, of course, so he wasn't poor, but the advancement that he afforded them, the security and stability that he afforded them was much better than before that moment. So he advanced the legacy, then established the dynasty is what I'm trying to say, and also avenged his people overall, his heritage, his bloodline. Now, in that moment, as he, what Goliath is representing is something we can all relate to, which is more or less our insecurities, because what Goliath was doing is just like trash talking on the battlefield. Like, y'all can't see me. I'm the Osiris of this. Wu-Tang is here forever, mother. Like that type of energy. He's just going off like, there ain't no opponent in the land that could, this and that. Your God ain't this, that, whatever. And disrespecting the God of Israel was a spit in the face for the children of Israel, but still no one was able to overcome that fear to stand firm against it. So it kind of like is a reflection of our own personal insecurities, because David took it very personally. It's like, y'all gonna sit here and let this giant disrespect our God in our home? So that's one inflection of it that speaks volumes, that's more relatable, practically speaking. But the point of how he jumped timelines, which I felt would have been appropriate to share during this leap day and this leap year, is he had already had the prophecy, right? He had already been anointed, but he was not yet appointed. And now this moment comes where he could have taken he could have done what he came there to do and went back on to tend to his sheep on his father's pasture. But that moment accelerated his ascension to position because of his courage to face it beyond even what he was really like slated to do. Like, nobody asked him, nobody sent for him, nobody even, he was not even the ideal candidate for this challenge, not by his brothers who shooed him off to go back, give me my lunch and get on somewhere, like, what are you even doing here type of energy. He was questioned by the authorities, like, you sure you want to do this? If you want to, all right, well, let me give you my armor. And it's like, nah, I can't even use your armor. Saul put his armor on him. It wasn't a good fit. He had to use what he knew, what was familiar to him to get the job done. But all this to say is that was the moment of truth. That was the moment of destiny. He probably would have always still, if as the prophecy would have been fulfilled, stepped into that position. But who knows, if not for that moment, it could have been years, it could have been decades, for him to still be tending sheep if he had walked away and said, nah, that ain't for me. I'm gonna let the warriors fight the good fight, and I'm gonna go back to what I know best, or what's most comfortable, or he would have allowed even himself to be bogged down with the king's armor and fighting and out of his comfort zone, basically taking on someone else's identity to get the job done. He picked up a couple stones, his slingshot, which was his weapon of choice as he defended his sheep from all types of animalistic predators while he was more or less training in his menial position as a shepherd boy. Lo and behold, that would have been the preparation for him to take this divine opportunity to leap light years beyond the prophecy into the position itself. Like I said, if not for that moment, who knows how long it would have taken. And I also thought about, like, with that great threat of the giant over the people of Israel at that time themselves, there may not have been much kingdom to rule over, much less many people, if not for his bravery to step up to the challenge and defeat that enemy. You know, they might have been obliterated, and there may not have been much of a dynasty to continue. You know, so it speaks to me about really taking these like a special moment, and it's specific to you. You know, it's unique to you. It could be, you know, was his struggle in the position that he was in, even as I said, being the runt of the litter, kind of being the black sheep, pun intended, of his family, that ultimately prepared him for this champion opportunity, you know, this champion challenge that not only catapulted him into an elevated a position, an ascended position, but also more or less secured his family in the present tense and fortified a future for a dynasty to come. Those that wouldn't even know that they would be affected by, you know, this one singular moment that could have made all the difference for the not just the longevity, but the, what's the right word, like to what's the word that I'm looking for? The preservation, you know, the preservation of an entire people. So it's like you never know what you're being prepared for until that moment of truth comes up for you. And the rest, everyone else, no one else really knew. They probably thought he was crazy, like, little boy, what you think you gonna do with that big old giant when our best men on the front line are shaking in their boots, literally. And that's the moment when you may be able to shine the most. Now, I'm not saying go out there and look for those moments to, you know, to be reckless with no abandon, you know, like not just looking to be crazy to prove yourself or prove to yourself or to anyone else. But it's something to be said on this leap day about those obscure moments in time that only you could know, like, this is the moment, this is my invitation, this is my opportunity. And that moment that you take to actually step into it could literally make all the difference into the acceleration, or just accelerating the timeline of what you're already slated to experience. You know, like, consider an opportunity to engage in a particular business collaboration, or to be offered an opportunity, maybe even to move, maybe to take on a new position, or to quit a job, you know, and start a business. Those are the moments when our insecurities start to speak to us the loudest, telling us what we can't do, how many times we failed, what you think you doing, you know how many other people are better for this, and you and they can't even do it. Like everything that the ego more or less could tell you as to why you should turn around and walk away is what will be the loudest in that moment of truth, in that moment of facing, you know, perhaps your leap moment, you know, your not a leap moment, but your, what did I say it was? Like a timeline leaping moment, you know, or timeline transcendent moment. I don't know what to call it, but it's something here about that where you've gone on about your business, you know, a certain type of way, like David did, just tending to the sheep, doing what was expected of him naturally, even though he already knew that he had a great calling on his life. It had already been prophesied. And sometimes even in that space and time, it can be frustrating as to, okay, now what? What gets to happen on account of what I know my spirit has told me is true of myself. Sometimes your surroundings don't really match up to that prophecy, and definitely don't always seem to point you in the right direction as to the what's next or how to. And then all of a sudden comes an opportunity of a lifetime that literally will connect you from one point in your life and almost like literally it, like I don't even know the word for it. It's like a flash, I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm not supposed to go any more into it, or maybe I'll come back and speak more about it later. But on this day, as I was trying to get around it, because I felt insecure, mind you. Thank you, Spirit, for the transparency. I felt insecure that I didn't feel like I had worked it out enough to really share it. It just makes sense that not to let this moment pass on a leap day to talk about something that is so synergized in concept and spiritual concept, that it could only take one invitation, one opportunity, one catapulting moment, to literally take you from what was very simple to something that's very supernatural. And of course, from there, David didn't jump right into being the king, but it put him in a position. He wasn't in the pasture anymore. He was in the palace, because him taking that challenge and then succeeding in the challenge, of course, because not only did he kill Goliath, he also beheaded Goliath. So he cut the bloodline off of that insecurity. And essentially, like, what is that a reference for? But more or less, what's the right word? Killing a generational curse. That's killing is not the word I really want to use, but he basically stopped a generational curse. Literally, this was a torment of his people and subsequently of his bloodline. He stopped that, right? You literally cut the head off of that opposition, so that not only could it be stopped in that moment, but it wouldn't persist any longer. It couldn't persist from that point on. Cut that insecurity at its throat just by showing up to the challenge in the first place, So there's that he was able to free his bloodline in that regard. And after that, it put him in a more revered position, obviously, to be invited into the palace, not yet as the king, of course, because Saul didn't even know that he didn't know yet, let's say, that his position was in jeopardy. But it invited him as like an official member of the court at that point in time, where he was playing the harp for Saul, and like more or less like a servant to Saul, and even in a spiritual sense, because Saul had like certain spasms, and like he would kind of like kirk out pretty much, and the harp was soothing to his psychic attacks. It would soothe his psychic attacks so that he, I don't know, wouldn't be crazy. I don't know exactly, but when David would play the harp, which again was another thing that was in it was his gifting. David was a psalmist. David was ultimately king. He was a priest, and he was also a prophet, in addition to being the shepherd, and he was skilled at that as well. So basically, when he was invited to do that, that put him in the positioning for the power that was ultimately destined to him. Unbeknownst to Saul, although eventually Saul did see it. So there is the other aspect, that once you are then pronounced in your power, sometimes you can then have a target on your back, because other people see the promise of you or on you and sometimes become intimidated by it, which was the case between Saul and David. But ultimately, that still couldn't stop the trajectory of destiny, as it was already ordained by God in this case. It was already destined for David to take that throne. What was obscure, though, is how he was to get there and the timing of which he was to get there. Perhaps it was obscure because a lot of it was determined upon David's own co-creativity in that process. That again, had he not taken that Goliath moment, maybe it would have taken a little bit longer. Had he not taken the invitation to be Saul's heart player, and then eventually Saul started attacking him, but he still didn't come out of character. He still was respectful to Saul's position as king. He didn't get all up in his ego like, I'm supposed to be in your place, and he didn't do any of that. Like, there was something subdued about David's ego that allowed him to walk his path humbly, but that also accelerated his path greatly to a point, of course, of which we can't really determine would have been lesser or longer in hindsight, but it's something to be said about the moments that mattered most during his becoming. Like, had it not, though, what could have been different? Had he not been who he was naturally, what could have unfolded, not just for him and his legacy, but for the dynasty of the divine people as it is, as the story is told. Okay, so something about that needed to be released right now in order for me to move forward. That's why I was kind of like, you may be coming up on that moment. It may not be today. It may be. This is a whole leap year. I'm just speaking of it on today because this is the leap day, the 29th of February, of which we won't see another one of these until another 4 years. So it could be an opportunity such as I've just gone on and on about. I hope you caught something from it in my ranting. That is that moment of transcendence and acceleration for you, and tune into your internal voice as to how you get to be in that moment. But I would say, like I said, if it's a matter of even me as I'm sitting here like, no, I don't want to say that. I don't think it's time to say that. I need more information. I need to go study. That could be the moment. That could just be that giant wanting to more or less intimidate you out of taking a chance, out of taking an opportunity and just seeing what happens. Hell, who knows, But certainly it's the training that you've already had in those moments of pressure, in those moments where everything wasn't all good, everything wasn't, the most ideal, when you may have been out in the field, having to really, as I said, invest a great deal of blood, sweat, and tears. It wasn't pretty to be a shepherd boy back in them days. At the moment when David was anointed by Saul, he came in literally dirty, ruddy, like from being out in the field. And you may think that the ideal moment is something a little bit more pristine and fairy tale and perfected than who you revere yourself to be at this time. Maybe this is the message that you get to shift that perspective and see yourself as perfect just as you are, and see the opportunity as pure as it is, that may be a moment that is beyond what you call it, like you can't, beyond reoccurrence. Like you may not get a moment like this again. That you doesn't mean that you forfeit the prophecy. It doesn't mean that you may not get to where you're going eventually or in whatever time is allotted. But certainly certain individuals have aligned themselves to jump the line, to jump the timeline. And when I say jump the line of what seems conventional or traditional or even just common sense as to you do this to go there and that to go here. And that makes sense because that's the way that things are done. But it wasn't the way things are done for that shepherd boy to pick up stones in a slingshot and kill a giant and then behead it. That was way out of the norm. That was way out of convention. And the position, the trajectory and path that he was aligned with from that point on also was not normal. And some people are privy to that level of acceleration just by their dedication of what they've done or how the discipline, back to that word, the discipline and dedication that they've exhibited during the times when everything was normal and you were just being who you were and operating in the function that you thought you were called and designed to do so. Now's the time for that training to catapult you into what your true destined success may be. And it could come out of nowhere. Definitely come in a form that would be, unexpected and unprecedented. Wowzers. And you know what? I'm going to switch these around. I'm going to put this one here because this was the dedication to divine self, even in the pasture where nobody was watching, where he just took great pride in protecting his father's sheep and said, I'm going to do this job to the best of my ability. And he was fighting lions and bears and whatever the hell else. I don't even know, whatever they had in that time. But I know for sure lions was one of them. Go figure, in the scripture. With his bare hands is what it said. Just to protect the innocence of the sheep and the integrity of the position that he was ordained to be in at that time. He took it seriously. It wasn't menial to him. He was honorable in his dedication and devotion. And that's what the high priestess is. It's like there is no small job. It only matters how you devote yourself to the task and to the spirit of excellence in that execution. That's the tried, test, and proven exemplification, if that's a word, of someone that would be in alignment for exaltation or elevation in any particular sense. And this is in any regard. It doesn't have to be spiritual or religious, for sure, as you know from how I'm coming most times. But this translates to even the most practical matters. I mean, the sheep is a practical job. One of the most the shepherd is the most practical jobs. It's like the equivalent to like blue collar work, back in that time. It was nothing glamorous about it, but he took it seriously. And so the train is like where no one was out there watching him doing the job that he was doing. God was, God was watching. And if anything, as I said earlier, there was spiritual support. He was ordained to be successful because he had proven himself to be worthy of, I'll say, proven himself sacred. He had sanctified himself, like set himself apart to be dedicated to whatever he was doing and to do it with the best of his ability. And that's the type of energy that spirit, God, universe, whatever you subscribe to, it can align with, because it knows like, well, hell, if you're going to do a bang up job as a shepherd, let me trust you with my people. If you care that much to kill a lion with your bare hands for a sheep, then certainly, as he proved himself to do, you would put yourself on the line. It's really an analogy for the two. If you get into it, you would put yourself on the line and on the front line at that to cover the people, the divine dynasty as it is spoken of, right? And then here's the reward, which is the 10 of Cups. This is spiritual fulfillment, wellness, a legacy of love, solidify past, present, and future. And it's not particularly material because it's not a matter of materialism. It's a matter of the sanctity of the spirit, the covenant of creation. This is that expression here with the 10 of Cups. On account of David's strength, it saved an entire lifeline, even beyond what was just in line for his bloodline, if you get into it, because we know that Jesus came through the bloodline of David, and that's a whole nother stretch of family and friends, that this entails in that regard. That's beyond just what is simply, I'm related to you, you're related to me, literally by way of blood. This is the extended family of divinity here with the 10 of Cups, and opening a pathway for there to be the potential of promise extended to all, meaning that all would have access to that spirit of life, of a fulfilled life experience on account of one decision. One decision opened up the pathways for others to have a future or a possibility, a hope for something more fulfilling than what they would have had before that moment. That's you. You hold that power somehow. I hope that's transmitting clearly that's the exaltation here, is that because of your pure dedication, devotion, passion, strength, will, sanctity, sanctification, setting yourself apart, dedication to your supreme self, honor and reverence of source, whatever you revere that to be. This is the exchange, the 10 of Cups, walking away from energies that didn't align with that supreme self, that didn't project source, and also standing up for, what you believe in, ultimately, even if it's in a very quiet way, not, like I said, not necessarily out there looking for a fight, looking for the enemy, looking for the opponent. David was just doing his duty that day. He was just coming to be of service. And wouldn't you know it, the opportunity of a lifetime presented itself, and he took it. Nothing new under the sun in that regard. And no short of a necessity for brave hearts to assert themselves in that spirit now more than ever before, I would say, so that there's a security, first of all, of a vengeance for the path that was already paved for you to activate in this regard, based on what your ancestors, your predecessors sacrificed to do so, for you to do so, for you to solidify your position of reception based in return for as a reward for your willingness and courage to be that person, to be that one, and to fortify the future for those that come after you to have access to that possibility. The way that things are going right now, we need more champions of the present to fortify the future, to lay certain foundations and groundworks just by way of our belief systems alone and our submissions to our supreme selves, what we will stand for and what we won't, to create a landscape that is livable for our children and our children's children, and so on and so forth. Forevermore, hopefully, is the idea. That would look anything like this, happy, peaceful, prosperous, productive, harmonious. That doesn't come on account of conforming to the status quo or surrendering to the giants of even our own insecurities, the fear of being misunderstood, rejected, you know all the things. Fear in general, let's just call it what it is, because that was the overarching theme, is that everybody else but David was afraid. Really more so afraid that they would ultimately meet their own demise just on account of stepping up to the challenge. David was the one that wasn't afraid of a demise. It was non-existent to him, as a matter of fact, because he felt like he was empowered to overcome any obstacle. In the spirit of reality as it is now, the stakes are so much higher and the opposition is so much louder against our supreme submission to believe that we are greater than any of it. The projections speak something very differently and almost, that reflect a pale comparison of any possibility of a fulfillment of life, unless you go about it in a certain type of way that would be sacrilegious to ultimately your supreme self and what you truly hold valuable and important. So there is the crossroads moment here for all of us now to conform and to be submissive to what is most palatable in our everyday lives, what may even be comfortable to surrender to. Definitely presents a certain sense of security, although it be false, spoiler alert, but some sense of security, against the threat of our own mortality. You can stay there, but that doesn't segue into solidifying the future that looks like that, the 10 of Cups. That looks like promise, that looks like peace. The former is you more or less laying the groundwork to stay on that path of trauma and toxicity, of which is the giant itself. That cycle, that generational cycle or curse that won't just die with you, it'll continue on into the next, until there's yet another David, brave-hearted enough to arise to break those chains. But this is an opportunity in this lifetime for you to do so, and it shouldn't be a fear as to, but what if I die? No, you break the chains for yourself to live now, and subsequently, so does your legacy get to live, perhaps eternally. It's not for the faint at heart, of course, but it certainly is, it's surmountable, if that's the word that I'm looking for. I think you know what I mean. Yeah, because these are the ancestors here that have the past recollection and reflection, the intel to lead you, really almost be like the generals of your path, so that you don't really have to go about this journey blindly per se, unless you choose to, but that wouldn't really be the makings of a victor or a champion, of sorts, as it is projected here. This is someone that knows that there's more beyond themselves than what they can see, and they're tapped into that source, and their channel is clear enough to hear that pure transmission, not what would be dirty and distorted and maybe even, catering to. This is someone that knows, when you hear a certain word in your spirit, nah, that ain't the one to follow. You know the difference, the intel. And even as I was sitting here kind of tussling with myself, that's why I said I have some things to say, but if I don't feel prompted to do it, then I won't. And when you hear that voice, it's now, go, charge, attack, stand down, about face, at ease. You know those directives in your spirit. You know it. And you know what's going to, as you're tapped in and tuned in to that special intel, that is leading you to a prosperous place, is leading you to a victory. So there's no fear in that regard. It's the reason why David could stand up to a giant with no armor, a slingshot, and stones, because what is secure and a shield and even a sword of protection for others is not necessary for I should say for most, is not necessary for some. It's not necessary. You don't need all the bells and whistles and all the, you got spirit. You got spirit. Yes, you do. You got spirit. How about you? You got spirit. That's how about you. Whoa. Moon that slid all the way across the way. All right, we got the moon card here. Yeah, even in the most obscure circumstances, you can see. You have light, you have intel, you have your optics are clear, where others are like, it's a little bit shaky, I'm not too sure, I don't, you would go forth in the night fearlessly, because you know that how you're being guided and what's guiding you is trustworthy. And that comes from first being able to trust yourself. So you would have had to cultivate it yourself in a way to be able to trust self, and then to be able to trust that intel that ultimately was leading you all along. It's kind of a chicken or the egg type of thing. It's a dance between spirit and self, and nature. But it's a beautiful one, like a swan dance. I saw a video of that, a short of that the other day, and I had never seen that before. I know that there are ballets like Swan Lake or whatever that ballet is called, but I didn't know that it was really based off of nature. And when I saw that short of swans doing their mating dance, it was the most graceful, gentle, majestic expression of love I had ever seen in my life. It was so sweet and so soft, and they were so in sync in their movements. If I can find that, I don't know if it has anything really to do with this message other than me saying that that's the synergy between yourself and source. However, if I can find that, I will post it, because it was magnificent. All right, let's get one more card, and I think I've talked enough. So says my incense burned out. But thank you for rocking with me if you're still here. I appreciate it. Clearly, I was supposed to get that out today, so thank you for indulging me. All right, let's see. Spirit, can I just get one more card, please? Easily. Wow. What did I just say, y'all? Talking about the swans. And this is the expression of that, because of course, yeah, it's love and all that great stuff too. And I love it here with the 10 of Cups. So it is certainly very much so the natural expression of divine union and partnership that we all love, or love to hate, whichever end of the spectrum you on. But it's that swan dance, like you surrendering to your supreme self and supreme surrendering to you. And there being a convergence of those energies, there being a synergy between those frequencies to almost, more or less converge as one. This is the physical, natural expression of that with the Lovers card. Being on the same page, on one accord in spirit and in truth. You devoted yourself to that resonance in a way that you couldn't have even had, you didn't have any evidence for. There was no practical proof as to why you should do this thing. You didn't have any past experience, really, that was equal, measured up, pound for pound, reflection for reflection. You had no future guarantees, you had no present securities in place. You just had to trust yourself, trust your instincts, trust your intuition, trust what your spirit was speaking to you against a world of loud and ferocious insecurities, not just from the inside out, but most certainly from the outside projecting in. And you still, this is the obscurity here, and you still maintained, as I said in the beginning, dedication, devotion, and discipline to your most divine identity. No wonder you are exalted. And this is the synergy between the likeness of surrogates of source that do get to continue to procreate in a way that populates the world with more high vibrational offspring, to continue the legacy, to extend, to solidify the dynasty forever. Because their children, their children's children are impacted and impressed the mentality, the ascended mentality and mindset and spirit, and even body, let's say, that they have acquired for themselves, that they have, what can I say, like apprehended almost, like accosted. What's the word when you take over a territory? That they have, damn, I can't think of the word, but you know what I mean when you take over something, like you know what I mean, like as a warrior would do, when you occupy that space. In this case, when you allow that spirit to occupy you, it still is you seizing the opportunity to elevate your frequency to be occupied, though. So it still all comes back to the choices that we take, and particularly those ones that shoot us through transcendent portals that wouldn't otherwise exist without us positioning ourselves to call it in, let's say, to manifest that matter of manifestation, or that medium of manifestation for ourselves. Co-creative, always co-creative. It's nothing that gets to be done in a natural form. There's nothing that gets to be done spiritually that the natural order doesn't have to be in alignment with. Even us as human beings have to be in accordance and in agreement with how the spirit wants to project itself one way or another, whether it be in frequency and health, wellness, energy, agreement, even awareness. How about that? Awareness probably more so than anything. Maybe not, but certainly a big one for sure. Acceptance, absolutely, acceptance. So all that to say, you've done a bang up job, kid. Whatever them 5 stones, was it 3 or 5? I don't know, but 5 is the number of change, so that makes about sense in this regard. Accelerated change, whatever it is that you picked up and put in your back pocket along the journey, along this pathway, has proven itself to be valuable to you, to the legacy that you lead, and to the future that you fortify in this very moment. So congratulations, you're doing amazing. And there's nothing to be worried about. Here's that spirit of fear here of what could go wrong, what might go wrong, how you may fall short if you take this opportunity, like really stressing about what could happen. This is really, that's the thought here of what's the worst that could happen, or even idealizing the worst case scenario. Ain't no time for that. You got to pick up them stones, pick up that slingshot, and knock that giant out. And then when you get done with that, take one of these swords off the wall and cut its head off. Assassinate that giant so that it never has an opportunity to speak death into your dynasty, not one more day beyond this point. Not that giant. There may be others to slay, but that giant, perhaps even today, has met its demise. Let's see what we got here. Whoop, and there's the victor. And to the victor goes the spoils, to not just move forward, but to move, well, not just to move on from whatever the stress and, a life of struggle, let's say perhaps, but now to advance an entire legacy forward beyond the point of limitation. That's what this is giving me here with the Chariot card. That is ultimate success, victory, triumph over great feats, decorated warrior, celebrated warrior, as David was as well. I forgot that aspect of him. He was many things, but he was also a celebrated warrior, not just for the giant he went on to be, which was ultimately what really started the friction between himself and Saul, because David killed tens of thousands of men in battle, where Saul killed his thousands, as the lady sang. He ain't like that. His ego got the best of him. And there started the decline of Saul and the transcendence of King David. And Saul was just as anointed too. He was positioned, he was appointed to that position as the first king of Israel. But he let his insecurities, he let those giants in his psyche get the best of him. But you're not going to do that. You got 9 swords for anyone that wanted. Knock them dead is what I say. Knock them dead. All right, so I'm going to leave it there. Again, thank you so much for indulging my transmission today. I hope that it made sense to you in spirit and in truth. You're doing amazing, and you're about to see some evidence of that just by way of invitation itself, to have access to opportunities that you just didn't even know you were being considered for. That's the most practical expression of all of this, that somebody has already appointed you to be the man or woman for the job, the position, the power, the opportunity, the business, the relationship, the partnership, whatever it is, somebody has already idealized you as the one, okay? All you got to do is just be. So much love and Godspeed indeed to you in the being of yourself, purely and naturally, already celebrated. All right, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, as always, I leave you with peace.